Good morning, everyone. My name is Margit Griffith. I am the Director of Religious Education, and Jenny, our interim minister, and Sarah Klekowski, our student minister, are off this Sunday, and deservedly so. So I was charged with the responsibility for this service, and gladly so, and then ran into some family issues, and the deacons have stepped up this morning. So I join you with a lighter load from me. Melinda, thank you so much for pulling this all together. And Gus, we anticipate your sermon, and thank you. Welcome, welcome, whoever you are. Wanderers, worshipers, seekers, friends, you are met here with joy and love. First Parish in Lincoln is a spiritual home to people who identify 35 different faith backgrounds and traditions. All are welcome here. We begin this morning, as usual, with a few announcements. And Alice de Normandy, you have the first.
Good morning. I speak on behalf of Outreach and the Easter Offering. Healthcare Without Walls is our choice this year, dedicated to providing free, compassionate medical care, education, and advocacy for homeless women and children in Greater Boston. Just this week, I heard some wonderful news. This spring, they will open their own walk-in clinic at 41 West Street in Boston, staffed by nurse practitioners and volunteer doctors. Convenience, extended hours, and safety are key for homeless women to access the health services they need. And this new clinic is located minutes from Boston Common, Park Street T, and area shelters. Rosie's Place and Pine Street Inn will refer homeless women to this clinic. This organization's Bridges to Elders program for homeless women over 55 will have dedicated space and be easily accessible. Supporting vulnerable homeless women and children wherever they congregate will always remain this organization's signature program. Your generosity is so appreciated by Healthcare Without Walls. The Easter offering link on the FPL website is still open. Checks sent to the church are also most welcomed. Dr. Rosanna Means, founder and director of Healthcare Without Walls, says thank you, First Parish. And now I pass to Peter.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Hussey for the Parish Committee. We're in the process of building our search committee for the settled minister with parish input. And we now have 8 candidates who have very generously agreed to the second phase of our selection process. And those people are Sarah Andresiak, Janet Boynton, Larry Buell, Tom de Normandy, Deanna LaFerriere, Jeannie Morris, Heather Ring, and Katie Walker. You'll be receiving a memo from Sarah this week that will ask for you to recommend 4 members from among this group to serve on the search committee. And we'd love for everyone to participate in this. The parish committee will then work to add balance if needed to the outcome of that selection process in order to get to our final committee of 7 members. And that group of 7 selected candidates will be presented to the whole congregation at our annual meeting for ratification by the parish. Thank you, and now over to Melinda.
Good morning again. And now for our offering, we appreciate your generosity. You may donate online at fplincoln.org, donate, or mail a check to First Parish, 14 Lincoln Road, Lincoln. Thanks.
And it's my turn again. So James, before we do the opening words, can we just have the screen back so we can all give each other a wave this morning like we usually do? Good morning. I'm scrolling through. Can see all the folks right here. Oh, lovely to have you all. Thank you. Good morning. Wonderful. Good morning. Good morning. And now for our opening words. Go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. Our opening hymn this morning is God of Grace and God of Glory. This morning, as we resume our sermon series focusing on our covenant and call to ministry, we are considering what it means to be in the service of all. And we ask, Holy Spirit, universal light, God, come, whoever you are, guide us, bless us, be with us this morning as we gather to celebrate your abiding love.
And now for our covenant. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for worship of God and the service of all.
And there it is again, the service of all. In January, Jenny and Sarah started us off with the love of truth and the spirit of Jesus and the worship of God. And we continue now with the service of all and cherishing the living earth, I think is next. And the dignity of all follows that. As we round out our a little bit more in-depth look at what our covenant is, what it isn't, what it may be. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about some of the early lessons I got in the service of all and in a lot of the things that our covenant says. And one of the things from my childhood, and before I say it, I'm going to predict that some of you shared this with your children. Some of you may have been babysitting age and had children share it with you. I was in between. I had a younger sister, but do you remember Free to Be You and Me? Is that ringing any bells? It's a wonderful collection of songs and stories that I grew up on, and it was a way for parents to help nurture a sense of equality, a sense of inclusion for their children. And I'm going to share this morning one song which I thought was fantastic because it includes a cheeky child. And we have either all been or known a cheeky child. I will not say which I am or not. I admit to nothing. But I'm going to share with you one of my favorite songs from that collection. And it talks a little bit about who it is that's in the service of all, or what it can be. I hope this works. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna start that again.
Agatha Fry, she made a...
Oh, it's not working at all. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to try that again. It worked during rehearsal. What could possibly go wrong? So I think I won't do, I won't play this song by Tom Smothers. I'll sing it, and I apologize in advance. It's the song says, Agatha Fry, she made a pie, and Christopher John helped bake it. Christopher John, he mowed the lawn, and Agatha Fry helped rake it. Well, Zachary Zug took out the rug, and Jennifer Joy helped shake it. Jennifer Joy, she made a toy, and Zachary Zug helped break it. Some kind of help is the kind of help that helping's all about. And some kind of help is the kind of help we all can do without. And I'll have that, thank you. I'll have that song and the slideshow up on the website sometime on Monday when Sarah comes back. But I love that song. Some kind of help is the kind of help that helping is all about. And there are lots of ways to be helpful. We can be helpful in small ways, like taking care of things at home. We can be helpful in big ways, like taking care of things in our community. And if you haven't engaged with Free to Be You and Me, I encourage you to have a listen for yourself, for your children, for your grandchildren. It's a wonderful collection. Good morning.
And now for our first reading from Exodus chapter 23, verse 9. You shall not oppress a stranger. You know the heart of a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And then Leviticus chapter 19, verses 33 and 34. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him or her as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
As a part of the stewardship campaign this spring, the Generous Giving team has asked me and my daughter, Carolyn, to say something about why we give to First Parish. I learned many things from my Colorado Outward Bound experience as a teen. For the 3 days of the solo, I sat by myself on a riverbank in the desert with no food and no sleeping bag. And I was cold, I was hungry. But I realized that what I missed the most was the company of other people. I'm an introvert, and it surprised me that the community was even more important to me than food or warmth. My husband Fred's parents were active in First Parish in the 1980s, but I did not go to church regularly until my youngest child, Carolyn, became involved in the 8th grade breakfast club. Roger Payne spotted me sitting in my usual spot under the balcony, and he asked me to give a prayer. What's a prayer? For me, it is taking time to pause and be aware of our connection to the whole. I started to write for the Lenten booklet. I joined the choir, having not sung in a group since high school. I found a voice. The last few years have taught us all the value of this precious and fragile community we share. A community in which searching for understanding replaces dogma. And that's why I'm here. That's why I give. Now, let me put Carolyn on.
Critical role of grandparents. So I'm Carolyn Mansfield DuPont, and the First Parish has been, as Roger used to say for me, a still point in my turning world. When I went off to a different high school than my Lincoln friends that I'd been together with since Lincoln Nursery School, coming back to church was a chance to stay connected. I would scan the pews and look for familiar faces and catch up with folks after the service. And then I went to California for college, and as I would think back to home and what it meant to grow up in Lincoln and what made it so special, I'd picture the sanctuary, candlelit on Christmas Eve or in springtime with glimpses of flowering trees outside like this week. Over time, we held memorial services in the sanctuary for both my grandparents, who were members of the church, as my mom said, and later Roger officiated both my brother's wedding and my own. Now I hope the church can provide the same sense of place and connection for our family, and it's been amazing to bring our kids into the community. We dedicated our son Nate among the smiling faces of the congregation, and seeing him looking up at my mom Grammy in the choir loft, or watching his delight at the Christmas fair a couple years ago, marveling at Santa arriving on a fire truck, and rummaging through the toy room upstairs, just like I used to when I was little. Well, the turning of life feels even more crazy with 2 little kids, and most weekends we cannot get our act together to actually join for the services. It's important for me to know that this community, this church, and the sanctuary will continue to be a still point for me and for our kids as they grow up, and that is why we give.
And now we come to the time in our service we set aside for silent and spoken prayers. After our prayer hymn, we will have a moment of silence, followed by reading the prayers you have sent in. You can use the chat feature to share a prayer with us. So when you are ready, Sit up with a straight spine and feet flat on the floor. Hands on your lap. Close your eyes and bring awareness to your breath. Silence is the soul's break for freedom. Our prayers for Sue Stason and her daughter Amanda in San Francisco. A prayer for Julie Hibben, who fell and broke her fibula. She is recovering at Leahy and will be home soon. A prayer of gratitude for all the support over the week. The beautiful meals from Adam Graves' family, flowers and wine, the movie night care package from the care committee, the support from the staff and deacons, and all the offers of help and prayers from so many. Thank you. The Griffith family members are on the mend. I am grateful for some time this week with my granddaughter on a little journey to Masmoka in North Adams. A prayer for my younger sister who undergoes surgery on Monday for pins and plates after a ski accident weeks ago. A prayer from my dear friend Jenny Simmons, who is facing serious complications from surgery with her signature courage and optimism. And prayers for her family in Arlington, California, and Spain, who have known the light of her presence for 96 years. Thank you. We hold these prayers deep in our hearts.
This morning, let us welcome into our sacred circle a pastoral poem by Joy Harjo, poet warrior of the Muscogee Creek Nation and poet laureate of the United States of America. To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you, and know there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know except in moments steadily growing and in languages that aren't always sound. But other circles of motion, like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky, and wind swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see ourselves, we see you, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made all of this, and breathe knowing we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion. Like eagle rounding out the morning inside us, we pray that it will be done in beauty, in beauty. Please join me in the reading of the unison prayer. I pray to the great spiritual power in which I live and move and have my being. I pray to God. I pray that we may value each and every human being, knowing the power of each person to change the world. I pray that we may learn the peace that comes with forgiving and the strength we gain in loving, that we may learn to take nothing for granted in this life, and that we may learn to see and understand with our hearts. I pray for these things with humility. I pray because the hope is in me, and because of my faith in the ultimate triumph of the human spirit. I pray because my love for creation and because of my trust in God. I pray above all for peace throughout the world.
And now our second reading from Matthew chapter 22, verses 34 to 40. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees and the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love your Lord, your God, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. And an excerpt from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Just as compassion is the wish that all sentient beings be free of suffering, loving kindness is the wish that all may enjoy happiness. As with compassion, with cultivating loving kindness, it is important to start by taking a specific individual as a focus of our meditation. And then we extend the scope of our concern further and further to eventually encompass and embrace all sentient beings.
So, good morning. Here we are as we proclaim each week, united for the worship of God and the service of all. And what we're going to think about this week is actually the service of all part. So what's the context for this phrase? Here and now for us. We're 1 year plus into a global pandemic. COVID fatigue is gradually exhaustion. It's right out there. The media regularly show us pictures of folks basically throwing in the towel, just doing what they feel like doing, denying the presence of risk, the potential for serious illness, and even possibly death. It's so hard to be where we are, doing what we do, responsibly, consistently, every day of every week. For us in the First Parish, coming together in service, even if electronically or 6 feet apart or over the phone, and following the precedent of spiritual leaders from decades and centuries before, this is what keeps us together. Our rituals, our spoken commitments have kept our community together through so many things since 1746, a revolution for heaven's sake, through horribly draining wars, both domestic and overseas and worldwide, through epidemics beyond counting, dreadful diseases without a hope of effective treatment, and even through a 100-year schism within this church from 1842 to 1942. Our order of worship and its formulaic components are a significant part of what binds us as a community, and our repeating it every week reminds us that we are part of a community in our small New England village and much larger for ourselves, larger than ourselves. If the covenant that we repeat every Sunday is, as it's frequently referred to, the cornerstone of our church, then its last words are the bedrock upon which that cornerstone is set, and the service of all. Let's take some time this morning to remind ourselves what those words mean and what they have meant before now, beyond just being a nice thing to say. Let's start with service. Dictionary definitions of this word have evolved over the centuries to the point that one contemporary dictionary entry for the word service now includes the meaning an act of helpful activity. It's a kind sort of word. I mean, what we're doing this morning is a church service intended to be helpful, inspirational, consoling, and restorative for those participating. And then all, for the service of all. Who are those all? Is all defined as those of us who've logged in this morning? Is all the membership or the first parish, or the generally expanded web of members and participating non-members alike? Is all our townspeople? Is it everyone? Is the Dalai Lama, the passage Melinda just read, reminds us the Buddhist teaching is that one should practice loving kindness to all sentient beings. So how big is this circle of all? I had an epiphany the other day in Walgreens of Concord. I cut my finger in the kitchen the day before, not badly, but enough so that I wanted to keep the site clean while it healed. And the Band-Aid from the day before was coming loose while I was running errands. So there I was, detoured into Walgreens to buy a box of Band-Aids. And among all the choices, I noticed that there were 4 rows of seemingly identical Band-Aid boxes on the shelf. But then I noticed that they weren't exactly identical. And I realized that the picture on the front of the carton was the same Band-Aid, but slightly different for each row of boxes. The photo on the leftmost row of boxes was the standard Band-Aid, which I've been used to for over 70 years. I mean, you know, it was a Band-Aid. The row of boxes to the right of it was identical, except that the Band-Aid on the front of that box was a bit darker in color, kind of cafe au lait. And the Band-Aid on the cover of the row of boxes next to that was genuinely brown. And the Band-Aid on the cover of the row of boxes next to that was very dark and deep. And the sequence of thoughts cascaded through my brain. Thought 1, this is great. Now people whose skin color is different from traditional Band-Aid color can have Band-Aids that blend with their skin and won't be so conspicuous when they have them on, when they cut themselves like I did. Thought 2, it's about time. Why has it taken 101 years for Johnson & Johnson to enter the national mainstream? For heaven's sake. Thought 3, I'm going to steal this for the sermon that I have to deliver on Sunday. Steal the idea, not the box of Band-Aids, which I indeed did pay for. There we go. Okay, so here are some answers as to what service and all mean to me, and I hope to all of us. The service for which we unite each week is repeatedly explicated in Hebrew scriptures and in the Christian Bible, which is why this morning we've had readings from Genesis and Leviticus and Matthew, and also in Buddhist teachings. Service is basically being nice to others and doing good things. And all is there in as well. It isn't just being nice to the people living around you or those in your community, however community is defined. This morning's readings are talking about strangers, for goodness sake. And in Buddhist texts, it's expanded to all sentient beings, all conscious creatures. To save you from counting, somebody else has already done it, the word stranger is mentioned 39 times just in the first 5 books of the Bible. And it's in a positive context with instructions and some meaning attached to it. The stranger who sojourns with you shall be as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Reminding the ancient Hebrews that they have had their hard times. They had their years of exile in Egypt and then in Babylon, and it can happen again. And for those among us who identify as Christian, what clearer message do you need than the Savior's can't get clearer than this statement? And the second commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So we're getting an idea of what service is and who all look like. This past year has seen some wonderful acts of service in and by the First Parish community. Most recently, gift bags of Easter-related goodies showing up just to do something caring from the staff and from the Board of Deacons. We have Zoom meetings, we have discussions and presentations on all kinds of things, banners recognizing the people who have helped hold the town together, car parades recognizing our senior neighbors at the Commons, skating behind town offices. These are just a few examples of all the service things that we as a church community have done during these challenging months, and I expect will continue to do during the still challenging months that lie ahead of us. Our outreach collections and donations to worthy groups, not just in Lincoln, as we heard from Alice a few minutes ago. Support for the food pantry, yes, and beyond, because food insecure people are everywhere these days. Telephone check-ins with our at-home neighbors and with people whom we recognize as being someone who just might appreciate being checked in on. And if they don't appreciate it, it's okay. We won't call them back. But I'll close this examination of and the service of all with an example from our First Parish history, what I see as really being part of that bedrock, with an exemplary example of service and all. In the mid-1960s, as some of us know, there were actually 3 separate marches scheduled from Selma to Montgomery. The first of these was the one emblazoned in our collective memory as Bloody Sunday. The third of these was a march attended and participated in by Lincoln people, by our first parish minister, Charles Styron, our fellow parishioner, Elliot Hubbard of Winter Street, Elliot's neighbor on Old Winter Street, Alvin Levin, husband of our longtime choir member, Betty Levin, plus another member, a friend of Charlie Styron's named James Riddle. You want a further example of service? And I typed that in capital letters. Alvin Levin had contracted polio as an adult and was paralyzed from the waist down. Alvin flew to Alabama by himself with his wheelchair, knowing that he could probably only participate in the last mile of the march. Realistically, Alvin did arrange to be taken from the airport to that last mile of the march, trusting in the goodness of his Lincoln companions and of people in general, that there would be someone willing to push his wheelchair if his arms got too tired. Before these intrepid souls left Lincoln, they had arranged with Ken Bergen, another senior member of the First Parish of McIntosh Lane, and a lawyer's lawyer, that if they got into trouble, that Ken would accept their collect call, likely coming from jail. Well, when that call came from jail, Reverend Styron informed Ken that they would appreciate it if he would arrange $100 bail for them. Ken said quickly, of course. And 4 times $100 is $400, which is not inconsiderable in those days, but it was still within easy reach. And then he heard Charlie Styron say, there are 100 of us in here. That night, service, Ken Bergen reached out and corralled $10,000 from Lincoln people, mostly First Parish members, to be put up as bail. So, closing the loop, what's the service that we unite for each week? Who are the all that we commit to each week? This story I've just told exemplifies what those 4 words can mean. Indeed, during that long third march on the road from Selma, Elliot Hubbard said later, one of the local ladies participating wrapped it all up when she said to Elliot, "You're not just one of those mouth Christians. You're not just one of those mouth Christians." It's been said, by their deeds, ye shall know them. So what will our deeds be as the first parish in the 21st century? Who will our all be as a church, as a congregation? It's up to each of us to define and to exemplify what the service of all means for us individually and collectively as a spiritual community. May we live up to examples set by those who've come before us over the decades and over the centuries to provide yet another example to generations perhaps yet unborn of what the service of all can really be. May it be so.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
And now our call to ministry. We go forth from the worship of God to be faithful to the vision of Jesus, to affirm each person's dignity, and to cherish the living earth.
And for our benediction, we end with words from the psalmist. This is the day that the Lord hath given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Amen.
Oh.